Right. It would get us out of a lot of work. Okay, why don't we just get rolling? If there's anything anyone would particularly like to talk about tonight or see addressed, you're welcome to either say it or put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll just get started. And people seem to roll in within the first 5 minutes lately, I've noticed. It's the new trend. You start whatting people? Okay, so you're doing energy healing? Okay. Okay. Um is this something that is this something that you do professionally, or is this just something that just happens? And what does that feel like to you when that happens? What is your experience of that? Okay. Okay. So you had no meeting with this person, but you were feeling the future pain that they were going to experience? Okay. Okay. Um all right, let's talk about that a little bit because there are some things that you can do. Uh, One of the things that is very helpful is that you actually find a way to externalize that communication. So, and this is deeper than what I usually take in a class like this, but to actually create uh, an external altar or just something that represents where that communication is going to be happening. Because what happens now is it's all just kind of grounding itself in you, and it really needs to be grounded into a physical structure. And so the first thing I would try is I would just put something together outdoors that you go and you check upon, that is the place where that communication can be deposited. I would, your situation is very different. It's very special. I think a lot of us deal with empathy issues. I feel everything that goes through everybody's body, but you are feeling them before you even have a chance to make a connection. You are feeling future connections you are going to make. So I think the first thing I would try is the second you start feeling that you go out to that external place and just internally you put it on that surface that you create and you work with it there. And you just make an intention that you're going to leave it there. You are going to be returning to it and you're going to be working with it, on your terms. Try that first and see if that works. If it were any other kind of empathy, I would be saying you need to be really careful what kind of connections you make with people, because once the connection is made, I don't know how to turn it off. Every trick they give you of turning the dial down and pushing your energy out, those things work for about 5 minutes. Um, so it usually comes down to how are you living your life. The second thing I would try is I would try making an agreement with myself that I will stop connecting deeply in the future with people who are having these problems for a period of time and see if the commitment to not connect in the future is enough to prevent the connection from happening before you meet them. Does that make sense? It's basically the thing you do with empathy, uh, just projecting outward because it's projecting outward already against your will. So my advice is try those two things and then feel free to email me. Let me know how that goes. Okay? Okay. And someone is saying, if possible, can we talk a bit? What is the purpose of being? Not in a sad or suicidal kind of way. Like, what is the biggest goal to achieve on any given day? Yes, we can totally talk about that. And I think I want us to talk about that from the meditative state. So let's first do a little meditation, and I promise, we will talk about that today. We'll go really deep into it. So for now, just be where you are. Just let all of your awareness fill in this moment, right here, right now. Bring yourself deeply into this space, this moment. Slow yourself way down. So that you can really be here right now. And begin to focus on the breath. As you breathe in, you are right there with that inhale. As you breathe out, you're riding that exhale all the way down. Just stepping in to the simplicity of the breath. Nowhere to get to. Nothing to achieve. There is no race. Just enter this timeless moment and just steep yourself in that. that little bit of antsiness. Just be with it. That little bit of resistance that's keeping you from just opening all the way to your center. Just be with it. Here you are, in this moment, sitting in this room, feeling what you're feeling. Let it be exactly what it is. But keep watching your breath while you do it. Because as it changes, as it frees itself up, the breath is what is going to pump that feeling out of your body. This breath is a representative of every action you could ever take. How cleanly can you act in this moment? How simply and authentically can you inhale and exhale? How completely can you show up? For this perfect movement of lungs and ribs. Now, somebody asked a really important question, and I want to just look at it again to make sure. Can we talk about the purpose of being? Like, what is the biggest goal to achieve on any given day? It's a deeper question than most people realize. And I have a really deep answer that I'm worried you're not going to be able to hear. So let me see if I can find a more satisfying answer first, and then we'll do the deeper answer. The cleanliness with which I'm asking you to breathe, the authenticity with which I'm asking you to show up for the breath, the most you can do on any day is show up that cleanly for every single thing you do, word you say, and interaction you have. That's the ultimate of what you can do as a person on any given day. That perfected breathing that becomes just completely connected to that unconjured, natural state of open comfort and flow. That's a product of you really showing up and giving your attention. It's a product of choosing to be present. And surely you guys have noticed by now that when you shift your attention to the breath, there's a phase where, you're kind of doing it, but you're kind of not doing it too. Then you buckle down and you're really kind of doing it. But there's a part of you that just feels uncomfortable, a little shell that just resists a bit. And then if you keep going, that opens up. And some of you will start to find that it opens you up into very deep states of consciousness, that there's just so much more to see and feel in this moment than you realized. It opens you up to the silence, this vast, pregnant emptiness that just, in the beginning, gives you a better night's sleep, but over time it shows you how things work, because you're looking through clean eyes. The reason that it happens like that is because whenever you give your awareness to something consciously, your relationship with the object of your attention evolves. And the end destination of anything is the meditative state. Just going to say that again so it gets in. The end destination of anything, if it's given full attention, is the meditative state. So, nothing is divine and everything is divine. Someone who understood that was a singer named Jeff Buckley. He had a verse in that song, Hallelujah, that went something like, "You said I took his name in vain. Well, I don't even know his name. But if I did, well, really, what's it to you? There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter which you've heard, the holy or the broken hallelujah." Anything you give your attention to is as clean as anything else, if you are coming from an authentic place. So that's the simple teaching. The furthest you can go in any given day is to show up for every single moment in that way. It's kind of amazing when you do it, I've had people in the past who really wanted to control me. And this was actually on the monastery where I lived. Monasteries are not, they're just a different kind of cesspool in a lot of ways. But I remember, one day when I just finally stopped reacting to the fact that I didn't want to be controlled and instead just showed up for the moment. And it was like, in that moment, like, look in my eyes right now and see if you can feel this. In that moment, what she was doing was seen by the entire universe. Because when you show up, really show up, and watch with every inch of your being, you've let go of all the parts of you that separate you from everything else. And what's left is just a unit of the great everything. Don't take my word for it. Just try it. The next time you're having a difficult conversation, the lowest level is just reacting. A middle level is kill them with kindness. But the highest level is don't manipulate anything. Just throw yourself wide open and have the experience of being manipulated, of watching someone trying to manipulate you. And then just respond from the sanest place you can. They hate that. But it's fun to watch them squirm. You'll have people, I've had people in airports freak out on somebody, and maybe I'm standing behind them in line, and then they'll turn around and they'll just, for some reason, know to apologize to me. And it's because for a second they came in contact with something in an authentic state. I'm not perfect. I'm not always in the perfect state. But when things, in an airport, I try to be, just because there's so much energy flying around and it's hard on my body. So, I'm not interested in being your special unicorn. I'm interested in you learning about you. So don't take my word for any of this, just try it. Try it and see what you can see from it. All right. So that's the simpler level of that teaching. The purpose of life is to show up. To show up and bring full consciousness to everything you're doing. That's the purpose to being. But the deeper recognition is that none of that should come from a place of should. In the beginning, it has to come from a place of practice. But ultimately, it comes from a place of experience and knowledge. An experience and knowledge that begins to grow when you start really questioning what you even are. I don't know how ready you guys are to really hear this, but you'll hear it on whatever level you're ready. And I might get stopped from discussing it, but let's try. In a way, there are kind of two paths that people can walk in life. Most religions recognize these two paths and call them different things, but they're describing the same thing. They are the path of the personality, or we could call it the spiritual path. Spiritual is not the best word. Maybe the awakened path. In Christianity, that would translate to something like the path of God or the path of the serpent. In other religions, the religion is the path of God, and then ego living would be the path of the serpent. What most people in those religions don't realize is that they are on the path of the serpent. Just showing up and praying doesn't put you on the path to God. And by God, I don't mean a being sitting in the sky deciding whether or not you're naughty or nice. By God, I mean the intelligent, resonant silence that sits at the heart of the meditative state, that is responsible for every wakeful action that moves every molecule in your body. So don't let that word throw you. But most people are on the path of the personality, the path of the serpent. It's a path where you come into life and you start building this identity, and you spend your life viewing everything through your wants and your needs, your likes and your dislikes. Now, you are not the personality. Most people, when they enter a spiritual path or a path of awakening, are usually asked to curtail most of the things they want to do. And ironically, it's usually described as a path of freedom, and yet people feel like their freedoms are taken away from them because you're being asked to sit still for a certain period of time, to discipline yourself in different ways, to be very careful how you interact with others, to become more inclusive. Some people form religions out of that, but even if you don't, any spiritual path is going to teach you that acting just out of your own interests, acting in ways that are not serving the good of the whole, is going to keep you from the meditative state. It's going to keep you from happiness, and it's going to keep you from your awakening. So even when you are not a religious person, the rules are still there, and they're there because one way works and one way doesn't. The more that you live with an eye for service and a heart for compassion and a willingness to show up and do the things that you know you need to do but maybe don't want to do, the more you do that, the more everything comes into balance and your life works. The less you do that, the more you fall into holes. And you don't have to have met me to know that. Right? We've all had a window of 2 or 3 weeks where we were successful at exercising. Right? Things were working better when you were doing that. You don't have to be a monk of 30 years to know that if you don't consider people's needs, they're not going to want to be around you. You're not going to feel as good at the end of the day. So the path of the personality, which is the path of doing what you want based on your likes, dislikes, attitudes, and opinions, looks to the person like a path of freedom, but it is actually a path of slavery. Why? Because you didn't decide any of those things. There is this idea that a personality has free will. I agree that it feels like we have free will because there are things we want to do and we decide whether to do them or not do them. But if you really sit with it for a long time and really work your way back, what you're going to come to, and again, don't take my word for it, sit with it. But what you're going to come to is that even though you can choose to go for what you want or push against what you want, you never really got to choose what you want. You came into this life with a series of things that you just wanted or were capable of wanting. You're here because a part of you wants to take action to feel better. Some of you want to become kinder people, or you want to become more efficient, or you want to become more awake. And so you chose to come here. I'll give you that. But what you didn't choose was to want that. And so that really is a system that is specific to your personality, and it is put together through your genetics, which is random in a sense, randomly allocated in a sense. It's trickier than that, but we don't need to go there tonight. Your genetics, and then every interaction that you've had. Okay, so your ancestry, and then every single interaction you've ever had is what is determining your likes, dislikes, attitudes, opinions, and wants. All of that is an external locus of control. None of that starts in you. None of it. You are responding to it by choosing to do something or not do something. So this idea that your personality is freedom because you want to have pizza, so you're going to have pizza, or you want to run, so you're going to run, it's not really freedom. Not really. And you're not really exercising free will. You think you are, and it's an important thing to think you are. That's an important dynamic because that's the thing inside of you that says, I have the option of living the best of what this system of wants is. But you didn't decide the wants. So it's still a kind of slavery. Then there's the other path. And that is the spiritual path. That is the path of awakening. And what that path is, first, we throw you open. We get your attention off of the path of the personality so that you can be with what's left. And then what most people do is they give you a system of rules to follow, and they call that religion. And what those rules are, before they get adulterated by the hands of man, they're usually very simple in the beginning. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Love is the law. Balance is the law. And those are things that if no one ever tells them to you, if you sit long enough in meditation and then observe people from the lens of someone who is showing up and watching with clarity, what you're going to see is that all of life is built on balance. All of life is run on balance. Anything pushed in one direction is always heading back towards its opposite, and then heading back towards its opposite. The pendulum is always swinging, but the law of the pendulum is gravity. The law of the pendulum is that you're always being pulled back towards the center. Okay? So anything you do that insists on an extreme goes against the law that runs everything, and you're going to find yourself exhausted and suffering. Now, you're in a world that is run on the personality. It is run on stories. So you're going to have to push the pendulum. But knowing how things work and being awake and aware, you don't allow somebody else to throw your pendulum way far in one direction just so that you can have a knee-jerk reaction to something. You show up and instead you recognize through your clarity, through your being, that, oh, the pendulum is active in this person. They're experiencing this imbalance over here. And generally, if you're smart, what you do is you provide them with an antidote. You provide them with an opposite quality. If they're angry, you provide kindness. You provide tolerance. If they are sad, you provide, I would say at a minimum, happy. But usually if someone is sad, it's because they're not seeing the bigger picture. And so if you're really focused, what you're going to do is you're just going to open wide up and let all of that flow. Do you remember that heart training I taught you? That breathing in and flowing out that I taught you? That's where that comes into play. And when you're showing up in the moment, those things happen very naturally. One of the things that you'll come to realize, and it takes a long time to really get this, is that you are not the personality, nor are you the path, the spiritual path. You are consciousness. You are seeing the personality and all of its components. But you are not the personality and its components. If you decide to shift your attention to a religion or a spiritual walk through life, you are seeing the silence. You are seeing the balance. You are consciousness. So in a sense, you're seeing what is, but you yourself are not. You yourself are not any one thing. You're consciousness. So that means you have the power to perceive and you have the power to process. So when you're living in the life of the personality, you are misidentified with everything. You've got this sliver of a view that is built out of a tight system of likes and dislikes. And you are only seeing that. And when you process, your processing is trying to make sense of that, but you never really can because you don't have enough of the big picture. So you're assembling a picture, but you're missing all these pieces because you think some other piece isn't you and this is. None of those pieces are you. You're just the one seeing them. But you get caught in an idea that what you're seeing is you, that system is you. That's the path of the personality. That's the path of the serpent. That is the path of ego consciousness. Doesn't mean you're an evil person. It just means you're stuck. When instead you shift your attention off of that through something like meditation, or maybe you start meditating on spiritual principles, which are really just descriptions of how the energy dynamics of life works. When you shift your attention to that, then your processing becomes a formation of the whole. You are putting the pieces in place. You're trying to do the same thing when you're on the path of the personality, because that's the purpose of processing. You're trying to assemble the body of God, the body of this vast one thing that we're all a part of. But you don't have all the parts. Then you shift your attention off of the personality, either in a religious way or just the way we do it here, to be with what's left when you are not focusing on that anymore. And everything you learn from that place becomes your own sutra. And your processing is the building of your understanding of actual reality, the reality that doesn't require you holding it in place with an internal dialogue in your head. How do you do that? You have to have all the experiences. That means when you look at someone, you have to throw yourself open and understand them. Maybe you are not going to be a prostitute or a murderer or a thief in this life. But you can see them and you can understand them. You can throw yourself open in those moments and just observe the pendulums swinging in their life. And through them, you can have that experience. You can show up and work with different dynamics of spirituality, but also different dynamics of people who are stuck. And in doing all of that, you can expand this vast picture that you are assembling through your processing. And long before, you remember on Wheel of Fortune how they turn letters around, and long before they've turned every letter around, they can see the title. It's the same for you. You'll see the totality long before you've turned everything around. You just start to see the big picture and it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And then it just becomes little refinements from there and you just keep going. So the best you can be in a day, since you are not your personality, nor are you your spiritual path, is to just keep an awareness that you are not what's in front of you. That you are consciousness experiencing what's in front of you. And instead of hiding from it and hiding from the suffering, just let go. Let go and be with it. Now, if you are an extremely sensitive person, you want to be careful not to form deep connections with people in very, very difficult situations. A lot of times you can't help it. Life puts things on your plate. But be very, very careful not to find yourself in a martyr complex. I'm not saying anybody is. I don't know. I can tell you I have done that before. And it creates a life that is almost unlivable for a sensitive person. But if you are in it, if the moment is presenting itself to you, it is something that you are meant to experience. So show up for it. I would say the first step is to notice all of the little areas where you fall asleep. Okay? So I happen to know the person that asked me this is somebody in academia. So my advice to you would be start to notice, you're pretty awake in most of your communications, but when you go to have to start write something, like to go write something, do you find that you shut down inside just to get through it and grunt through it? And have you ever tried staying wide awake to every inch of that process, to not trying to make it go faster, to not trying to make it anything different than it is, but to really just be present with the whole universe while you do that? How many things can you bring that meditative practice into? It won't be easy in the beginning, but that's the goal, and that's the best you can do in a day, is show up. But by show up, I mean the real you, not just this little sliver of a personality. It's a lot to ask. But it's the way to complete the picture so that you don't have to take someone's word for it. The beauty of a shamanic path is that you go out and experience it for yourself. You see if it's true, and if it's true, it's yours. It's not mine. You know, you don't have to take my word for anything. I'm just saying, do this and this and this, practice that for a little while and you're going to see it. You know, I have no ulterior motives. I'm not asking for money. I'm not leading up to a timeshare opportunity. So it's worth trying. Because you're not what you think you are. You are not this little sliver of experiences of your personality. And you can feel that. When you're really sitting still, you can feel it. You know it's true. But you don't know what you're looking at. Not yet. So you just keep going. You know, I like to think of any day as a mandala. Do you all know what a mandala is? It's one of those things, a few different paths do something like this. I believe this one is Tibetan. And what they do is they build this, through mindfulness and colored sand, they will build this beautiful pattern on the ground. And that pattern just has energy coming off of it because it's a bunch of geometric shapes and beautiful colors all selected through the meditative state. You can just feel it when you look at it. And it's a tremendous amount of work and precision. And the second a gust of wind comes along, it can blow it all away. So they use it as a teaching on impermanence. But when I say life, a day is like a mandala, it's like the things that you have in your day determine who you are at the end of the day. So your entire day is like this collection of beautiful or ugly images on the ground of your day. And there's an energy that comes off of that. And at the end of your night, you want to be able to look at that day and just see somebody who really expanded and tried to grow and tried to understand rather than be understood. So that the energy coming off of that day feels different. And if you're meditating at night, you can actually see the impact of that really clearly. Where you can go in meditation changes according to how you lived your day. Again, don't take my word for it, just pay attention. And you'll see it. Sit in meditation. How easy is it for you to clear your mind? As that ringing starts to come in and you kind of just sort of elevate and go deeper and deeper, when you're really, really giving yourself to it, you're going to find that you get blocked at a certain point. There'll be a place you just can't expand any further. And some of you might be too early to even understand what I mean by expand further. But you'll get it as you continue to practice. Meditation is not static. It is a reaching, like a flower just given to its reach for the sun. You are just open and giving and reaching deeper and deeper into the heart of that one consciousness that we're all a part of. But you'll find you can only go so far. And when that happens, the answer is to look at your day. How did you live your day? What sort of things did you live against yourself on? What sort of things did you refuse to show up for? Fix it the next day, and then see how different your meditation is that night. So Bob is saying, if we're just consciousness, what do you mean by the path of the serpent? What I mean by the path of the serpent, Bob, is a Christian allegory. So you remember the serpent on the tree of knowledge. That serpent was saying, And I don't mean to get all crazy religious on you guys. That's not what this class is about. But these teachings are present everywhere. They're present whether you're atheist, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim. But in Christianity, the way they described it was the tree of knowledge. And the serpent basically told Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. And until that point, Adam and Eve were just connected to God. They were living this perfect life. They had the body of God that they were participating in and that they were connected in, and they didn't even have the knowledge to question it. But upon eating from the tree, suddenly they entered the world of knowledge, where they actually could come to have separation, which is what all of your special likes and dislikes are. I am this, I am not that. It's distinctions that you're drawing. That's the knowledge that's talked about in your Bible. And those distinctions are like a horizontal consciousness that eventually trap you in a very, very small world and make it hard for you to get back to the experience alluded to in the garden. So the path of the personality is that path. And yes, most people in any given religion are still very much on that path. You know, those are the people that you see running around trying to decide who gets to be loved by God and who doesn't. Those are the people who run around trying to decide what everybody else should do, what everybody else's right and wrongs are. That's all path of knowledge stuff. You know, and we all are born into it. You know, you are held by somebody and the first thing they start doing is dumping all of their hopes, dreams, fears, everything into you. You know, you come out this blank slate and very quickly you're just covered in everybody's crap. And then you watch what your parents will and won't participate in, you know, and some of it is based in morals, but those morals are not even necessarily coming from realization. They're coming from following a rule, which is still kind of part of the personality. You're taking something spiritual and bringing it onto the path of personality, rather than actually giving yourself to the object of that spiritual path and just allowing that to be a moment-to-moment conversation. But so that's why I say it is the path of the serpent. And I say it knowing full well that most Christians don't realize that. But it's all over your Bible. It is. You know, the way out of it is communion. So that can come through something like meditation. It can also come from deep, deep, deep prayer. Bob is asking, religious people believe this, but do you believe this happened? No. No, I believe that the Hebrew Bible especially is one of many ancient texts that were trying to codify reality. They were trying to explain what happened, how we got here, where we came from, and how do we get back? And so they were trying to point out that actually knowledge is what allowed us to leak out this way, and that's what we're all in now. We're all in horizontal consciousness. And the idea, at least in Christianity, is to get back to vertical consciousness. But the thing is, in a way, it's almost too late, right? Because we already have all this knowledge. So what it's really about is no longer letting that knowledge be your master, and instead showing up in full consciousness. Showing up in full consciousness and participating from an authentic, clean place, rather than from a rule in your head or something you think you know or some past experience that you're hung up on. And that is actually the road out of the personality onto the road that every religious or non-religious mystic is reaching for. That's a lot. Does that make sense? Am I just flapping my gums? Yeah, good. So that is the deeper answer to that question. And I'm sure it's confusing to some people. I'll post this for a week and you guys can go look at it if you want to see it again. But you hear it on the level you're ready to hear it. Any other questions about that before we close up? I think in honor of Sarah's original question, my homework for you guys this week is two things. One, to have at least one day where you force yourself to remember to show up completely for every single moment of your life that day. And to notice that night what your meditation is like compared to the night before. Okay? I think that's the beginning of starting to piece that together. All right, everybody. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to let you go because I have no air conditioning in this room and I am burning to death. All right. Thanks, everyone. You bet. You bet. Night, everybody.